All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I guess I have my first returning guest, Dr. Patrick Lockwood, here today. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Um, and so today I want to do something, I guess, a little bit different than just hearing Patrick's perspective, although I do obviously want to hear his perspective on something. But when I read books, I become kind of obsessive with the ideas, and what I'm trying to do is to see if these things make sense. So I'm trying to play with them constantly, whether that is through my interactions with other professionals in the field or even experimenting this with in work and seeing how these ideas work actually in the therapy session. So that's what I'm doing today is I'm reading a book called Reality Therapy by Dr. William Glasser, and it has some pretty controversial ideas in there, I would say, as far as its critique against mainstream mental health treatment. So I wanted to have a professor here to talk about, see what our ideas and thoughts on this were. So I was just going to give like a basic idea of what the idea that I find to be so interesting um, is that Dr. William Glasser rejects the idea of traditional mental health or mental illness. He doesn't believe mental illness exists. He sees that we are categorizing aberrant behavior or abnormal different experiences into categories that are illness, but it doesn't, unlike a medical illness, there's not something wrong with your brain. There's nothing biological that we point out most of the time. And his idea is that rather than there being some kind of illness that needs to be cured, it is a matter of responsibility or irresponsibility. And he defines responsibility as the ability to fulfill your needs, but to be able to do that without impeding someone else's ability to also meet their needs. And that people
Mm.
are failing to meet their needs in an appropriate way that's not impeding on other people. And they do this through a variety of means. And those variety of means are what we would really, within our normal, I guess, view of mental health, see as mental illness. When he's saying, well, this is just this person's way they have figured out to get their needs met, as opposed to there's some illness within them. They just have a certain style or pattern to get these needs met. And the actual categorization of these mental illnesses, whatever they're anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, are all kind of not necessarily relevant in the case of his goal is to make everyone more responsible for themselves so that they can meet their own needs while not impeding on other people's needs. So I want to see if you have any thoughts on this or if you've on these ideas.
Yeah, thank you for having me back and allowing me to come chat with you. It's always fun to record with you. And I would say I think it's actually a rather complicated set of things that you just listed off and rattled off. So I'd like to kind of break them apart a little bit,
Please.
if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Because because on the one hand, it's very easy to take the the tempting, juicy, scandalous sounding thing and live there, but I think it's a little more complicated than that. And so I want to start with the idea of personal responsibility because I think that's a really it's a talking point mostly. I think more than anything anymore. And so what does that really mean in the context of not just clinical psychology or therapy, but also like everyday life? And so personal responsibility can be thought of as an attitude of an orientation towards how you function in the world, but it can also be a habit you create. It can be a reminder you have in your head of something. It can be a way to, encourage responsibility as a disciplined way of functioning, so to speak. But then I also think that the concept of personal responsibility for some people is a way of ignoring and neglecting systems and the inevitability of the world around them. And it's kind of become this caricature, especially online on places like Twitter, where it's like the conservatives like personal responsibility and the liberals uh, think society is all sorts of screwed up, and it doesn't matter how much responsibility you take, you're still kind of screwed if you're poor or a marginalized group of people, so on and so forth. And I think that dichotomy gets very tempting to talk about, but it's actually rather boring to me, and I don't think it's very
Agreed.
useful because I think we can say that human beings, depending upon their mood and their attention and their energy, are more or less capable of even being aware of what's happening right now. And I don't believe that there is this like pull yourself up by your bootstraps, just take more responsibility, and everything will get better.
Hmm.
in the caricatured conservative view of things. And I also don't think that there's a human being alive that would suffer if they tried to just be more responsible in the moment, right?
And so,
So I think,
I was just thinking this might be a good moment to introduce another idea of this book because I agree with this idea of, yeah, you can't pull yourself up with the bootstraps. It's just some people are not there and able to do this. And
yeah,
I'm always thinking of like the idea and how these ideas relate to actual treatment of people is that is partly our jobs as clinicians to help and assist you through being involved with you enough to actually care enough to help you be responsible. So when we think of a lot of the differences in therapy of validation versus confrontation, some of this is being able to strike that balance to be, I am a supportive person, I'm on your side, but I'm also going to challenge you on things that are, I think, are causing you harm, or at least things that you're at least telling me are causing you harm.
yeah. And I think the important thing there, in my experience, is being very clear that it's because we have a professional relationship with these people specifically that we are encouraging responsibility. And
Mhm.
so that is why I don't like the conservative view of this, is because it assumes that you will, as an atomized individual, all by yourself in your head, magically figure out that being responsible in this moment when I'm angry at a 9 out of 10 is going to fix my life, which is absolute horseshit, in
Insane.
my opinion.
I mean, it's an insane idea.
So it's 100% true that the systems and the relationships we have influence us and can either encourage us in the direction of chaos and hurting ourselves and other people, or they can encourage us in the direction of encouragement and empowerment, right? And so good therapy involves some degree of encouragement and empowerment in whatever skills and tools based way you choose to do that with your personality and your insights. And I think the concept of encouragement as a relational experience is what is missing,
Mm.
right? And so, although I agree with Glasser about how important personal responsibility is, I think it's horseshit that you're just going to randomly pull yourselves up by your bootstraps because there's no randomness
Yep.
here. It's either you have supportive people around you or you've figured out how to find supportive people or you don't, right?
Do you think that part of like what's happening, because it's so interesting when as I'm reading this, he is so crystal clear that he agrees with you that this isn't something that like magically comes up by an individual, and actually any
Yeah.
failure that happens in treatment is a failure on the part of the clinician not to encourage and get involved in an appropriate manner. That it is not
Yeah.
actually, this idea that people, and I don't know about you, but a lot of the people that I've worked with, especially when I worked in schools, they have never had a single responsible adult encourage them in their entire life. And I think
Yes.
as someone that is trying to do treatment, I often think that is my role. And when I worked in the schools, I was trying to be a responsible adult that was on their side and encourage them to be more than what they are. And also, part of this is, I think you bring up an interesting idea, but again, I think I like to bring this up as it's a shift from how I was, when I'm learning about psychoanalysis and like that kind of more traditional sense is you don't do a teaching role. There's not, hey, I'm going to teach you some things or I'm going to tell you some things that I did that was maybe helpful. And this modality is more of talking that no, this you actually sometimes people need advice. They need someone that is going to say, "Hey, I've struggled with this, and I this is how I did it." Not that they're going to do the same thing, but that you're not, as you said, you're not going to like divine the right behavior out of nowhere. Sometimes you need help, and so I think it's an interesting contrast.
Yeah, I think the other thing, and the reason I'm making us think about this
Yeah.
is it's very easy, I think, to talk about this in the context of therapy specifically, and then try to apply it to everyday life.
Mm.
And I just don't agree with doing that because a lot of what we do, as our buddy Ed Perrin says, therapy is a terrible way to treat a friend. And he's right about that because in the specific context of psychotherapy, we have a specific boundaried relationship with specific goals and informed consent. We're trying to have a very specific and tailored approach to
Mm-hmm.
life with people in that 1 hour whatever space, which is not how regular life works. Regular life does not work like therapy. So this idea that some people might have as a result of listening to us that like you just need to be more responsible is not the takeaway in my opinion. one of the takeaways, in my opinion, if we're going to generalize this outside the context of therapy, is that we need to make sure we're curating people around us that
Yes.
keep us accountable and responsible. And as you and I have observed in the last, I'd say, week or so on Twitter, it's interesting how different people have different approaches to that. And so you need to be careful about how we choose people, because it's very often the case that we can be friendly with people or even dislike people that are good for us or are not good for us.
Mhm.
And it's a temptation that we all have. And one of the things that I think is missing from a lot of the conversations at the public level of discourse is
Okay.
the concept of encouragement. People try to reinforce behavior and enforce behavior with shame and judgment and things like that. And I think that that's perfectly natural and reactionary, but it's not our best self, in my opinion.
Mhm.
I think our best self is encouragement. And that, I think, is a better takeaway than the responsibility piece of this, from my opinion.
Sure.
Because actual encouragement is something we get to do in a specific strategic targeted way as
Mhm.
professionals, but everybody on the planet needs it.
Yeah, and I think that is probably my takeaway from as I read this, and I would say probably the appropriate conceptualization of this actual work is that you cannot do the responsibility thing without the encourage. Like the encouragement is a foundational piece, and you cannot do one without the other. And this piece of encouragement, I completely agree with you, is we often, I don't know, I've said that it's very easy to criticize. It's easy, it is effective, it feels good, especially when you dislike someone, or disagree with something that they're saying. It is a much more challenging, but I think fruitful to say, hey, I disagreed with this aspect of the thing that you wrote, but I think you got something here. Can we work on this? And to encourage that there's something there to keep going. And it has been, I would say, for you, from my experience with Twitter over the last, disappointing, that so much of people that in my opinion, I think probably agree on so many things are unwilling to sit with their discomfort and encourage one another to be better rather than to try to destroy. It's been disappointing, I would say.
Yeah, I think your disappointment is valid. Here's what I would say that's probably not going to be super popular to anyone who watches this. We
Mm-hmm.
are recording, right? It is being
Yes, it
recorded?
is.
Okay.
I'm looking over there. We're
Okay.
good.
Okay, so then let's see how much hot water I can get
You gonna
myself
get me
in
in
by
trouble?
saying this. Maybe. So, because this is about playing with ideas,
It
right?
is. We're playing with anything. Yeah, go
Yeah.
for it.
So, here's what I think, back to encouragement and responsibility.
Sure.
I believe that the people that currently do not like yourself and myself in particular are onto something. I don't think they're wrong. If I
Fair.
thought they were wrong, I probably would be saying it publicly. I'm not a very shy person. And so, and I'm very disagreeable and cantankerous. So my general approach is, if you're wrong, I will tell you. I think they're right. I don't think they're completely correct. I just think they're correct. And so the fact that they're correct about something
Mhm.
does not mean that they're completely correct. And so to me, the disappointment is that they are letting things that matter to them, right? These are things that matter to them. And they're letting that obfuscate the rest of what could be important about the relationship. However, having just said that, I believe everyone should feel completely 100% unfettered by being in a relationship with me. My personal belief, which might be a little antisocial in some way, is I don't ever want you to feel like you're responsible for me, or
Mm.
that you are owed anything, or I owe you anything, or that you're pressured to do something because of me. My general sincere interest is people to feel as free as possible as a result of their relationship with me. So I don't want people to feel trapped.
Mhm.
And so just because I hold those beliefs about myself and how I would like to interact with people, I likewise give everybody else that I interact with the same perspective, right? Would it be cool if we could be joking around with those people right now? That'd be fun. I'd like that. They're cool. I think genuinely they're cool
Mhm.
people. And at the same time, if they have some moral, emotional, or other reason that something bad is happening and they are not willing to tolerate it, then I appreciate and respect their freedom to make that choice. Because I think that is the ultimate form of love and respect to people is the freedom to do exactly as they believe is in alignment with their values, right? And so anytime somebody makes a values based decision, even if I don't like it, I still respect it.
Hmm?
You could be, just to use the culture war language, you could be the most right wing Nazi, whatever, and the most left wing woke, whatever. And if you are making a values based decision that's not immediately murdering somebody or something like that, I can understand it
Hmm?
and I can have respect for it. That doesn't mean I like your behavior. If you're doing things that I find disgusting or immoral, I'm still not going to like it, right? And I think that's what happens a lot online is we have our moral disgust based reactions,
Hmm.
which are totally valid.
Yeah.
And so I want you to have the freedom to have that experience. And I never, ever, ever want to try and convince you away from your morality and your disgust because I don't think I have the skills to do that, number one. And number two, that's there for a good reason, usually for self protective reasons in some adaptive way. And so if they need to protect themselves, I respect that. And I have zero frustration about it. And I really don't even take it personally to some significant extent because most of these people know nothing about us
Sure.
in that regard.
So I think I agree with every aspect of that. And part of it is I think part of my disappointment is in the first thing you said is that they're correct on a lot of things, and the inability for either side, and both sides I think are correct on certain things. The inability to hear one another. But yeah, of course, you can not like me, you can distance yourself from me. That's fine. I think my stance is my own naivete. I think it's sometimes I look to like I keep getting into spaces in my life where whether it's going to grad school, doing these, getting into professional organizations, and I keep waiting. I'm like, our job. This is this is a me thing. I always thought like my job is to sit with some people that have done some gnarly things, and that
Mm.
believe and think some gnarly things, and that even
Hmm.
express them openly continually to me, and my job is to help them still and not to lose sight of them. Obviously, I'm not working with these people on Twitter or anything of that nature. I'm surprised that disposition though is absent as much as it often is, and I think that's one of those things that I am, because it's one of those things like obviously I don't want to. There's this line here I could already see myself falling into. It's like, well, you're not, I'm not your client, and sure, but I do expect part of this is these are like principles that I live by in some sense, not just things that I perform at work. If that makes sense.
So I guess the challenge I have there, and
Mhm.
this is just me, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying
No,
that
dude.
this is how
I
you
think.
should think.
Yeah.
My experience is this. If you are trying to hold idealistic expectations about anyone or anything, you're going to be let down.
Hmm.
Number one. Number two, I do not expect people to be healthy or to be put together. What I would expect on average is for people to be human. And so to me, being human means being imperfect and it means being unpredictable to some significant degree. And it means being very emotional because one of the things that makes us really cool is our, stochastic emotionality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And for me, I would be willing to argue that that's part of what's cool about Twitter as well, is that there could be absurd disagreements and arguments and fights about all sorts of nonsense. That's kind of fun,
Yeah.
because that's what happens in other animal species. Why wouldn't it happen with us? They have
Sure.
stupid arguments about all sorts of shit. And I just think that, like, if I apply an above average standard to other people, I think that's just arrogance on my part. I wouldn't call it naivety. I would call it arrogance. I expect them to live up to some grandiose standard of mine. You know what I mean? When in reality, like, I don't know. I don't think that my thoughts and feelings are that special. I also don't think that other people's are. I think that it's really cool that, like I said this yesterday,
Yeah.
it's a privilege we get to talk to people, and it's a shame that I take it for granted and stuff, but also we're just people. And we put a lot of emotional weight into things that are not really meaningful. in my opinion.
No,
So
I'm sitting with that. I think you're right.
the
That,
ordinariness the ordinariness of people, I think, is something we forget. We put people on pedestals, and that's the most
yes.
disrespectful thing you can do, in my opinion,
Yeah.
to them,
No, 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 no.
because
Yeah.
you're holding them to a you're holding them to a standard that's not reasonable.
And they didn't consent to either. Like that,
Correct.
and I agree with your assessment of why I am the way that I I am the way that I'm thinking about it the way that I am because I totally agree with that. It's one of the things that you were saying before about everyone having different styles. One of the things that what I really agree with you is like respecting everyone's decision of like, hey, if you don't want to associate it with me or you don't like my presence, like, cool. I think that is okay. Because one thing I would say uncertain about is the way that I am doing things being correct or being the way of doing things. I actually really value that there are people that I dislike actually and don't feel very uncomfortable with the way that they handle things, but I'm not certain that my approach is right for every situation. And actually, I know that it is not. And so
It couldn't be.
it couldn't be. So like there's a level of appreciation that I have for people that are different, and maybe in radical ways that are like maybe so deeply uncomfortable. And I may even have feelings of like contempt towards these people, but I fall back into it's like, well, in a certain situation, like I might want this person in my corner or want their style of handling the situation.
Yeah. There's just so many really good examples of that. So can I use one from school?
Please, yeah.
Okay, so in the summer, I have the privilege of teaching the human sexuality class for the doctoral students. And without fail, every time I teach this class, we always have an hour's worth of conversation about the physical, medical, psychological, psychiatric consequences of birth control over the lifespan for women.
Okay.
And it's always voluntary. No one is pressured. I never push people. I don't cajole people. I don't prod people. It is just like, hey, this is a topic I think it's worth discussing. What do you think?
Mhm.
And without fail, my classes are usually 80, 90% females. And so all of them have horror stories about birth control. Every fucking last one of them has horror stories about doctors, OBGYNs, nurses, Planned Parenthood, just being cruel, uncaring, not thoughtful. Take the medication anyways, it'll stabilize how you feel.
Mhm.
Just like the most misogynistic and medicalized narcissism are the stories that I hear pretty much without fail every summer. And now maybe it's just the convenient sample of my grad students who happen to be females. Maybe it's that. I just highly doubt that their experience to a person is that different from every other woman in the West who's put on birth control, right?
Mhm.
And so one of the things we talk about as a result of that conversation, and they just tell us, and God bless them, and I'm so grateful they tell us these stories because for the two or three males in the room, many of us have no context for how insanely
None.
complicated and how dehumanizing the experience is for most women, right? And I'm going somewhere back to our friends on Twitter with this, by the way. So all these PsyD students are telling me doctors have demeaned them, doctors have said, don't worry about it. It's just going to be a pinch and it's
Mhm.
terribly painful, all sorts of terrible stuff, just terrible things. There's never like a great story, you know? And so women become second class citizens when it comes to the reproductive health. That has been a truth in this country since it started. And there's a litany of stereotypes about women and being crazy and bleeding and all these things that exist in our common
Mhm.
comedy, movies, TV shows, everything. And then I hear from all my students and I go, well, no wonder they are so angry because they are literally being mistreated about one of the most important things in their
Mhm.
physical and psychological well being. And they're being mistreated from the age of like 13 or 14 in many cases up to menopause. So they get 40 plus years of being mistreated by the healthcare system. And so when I hear people on Twitter, like our friends who don't like us anymore, be like, this is sexist and misogynist and all these things, I think that makes perfect sense to me. All of that is a okay, and I get it because how many times have these people been joked about in such a way that they are second class citizens? Like, is 2026 better for women than it's ever been? yes.
Hmm?
However, in the year of our Lord 2026, OBGYNs are still being like, I don't care that it's affecting your mood. Just keep taking it. Or I don't care that you're bleeding for 6 months with this particular implant. Keep using it. Right?
Hmm?
And so,
Yep.
like, that kind of shit is frankly infuriating to me.
Hmm.
I can't do much about it. So it's like impotent rage or
Sure.
whatever. But, like, because I'm not an OBGYN, you know? So when I hear those stories every summer, I think, you know what? Makes sense to me. Of course, many women have been mistreated, objectified, and dehumanized, even in the wealthiest and most successful and comfortable and egalitarian country on the planet.
Hmm?
And that happens all day and it's normal, right? And so if our buddy Jake, who is out of control and unhinged, and I love him despite the fact that he's a mess, because I love people who are not perfect, you know? And I don't know that he is a good person. And I don't have to care that he is a good person because I think he serves some useful function in the world, just like these people who don't like us. And I think they don't like us for very good reasons because they have experienced discrimination and dehumanization that I have not experienced. I have experienced some because of
Sure.
sexuality related reasons. I've experienced all sorts of religious discrimination in my life, but it's not remotely the same in some ways as a medical professional looking at you and thinking that you're just a uterus or not caring about the rest of your mental well being
Sure.
or using lazy stereotypes to brush you off. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so the woke part of me is like, I get exactly why they're pissed off at Jake Freeman. And I think
Of
they're pissed
course.
off for the correct reasons. I don't think they're wrong.
It doesn't surprise me at all that they're incredibly angry. Like, if you're surprised that they're angry at him, there's something wrong with you. Like that. Of course they are. Of course.
Yes,
Yeah.
because he says and does things that are absurd and ridiculous. And I would say probably some of it's intentionally misogynistic to get a reaction out of
It's
people.
very obviously intentional. I mean, I don't know how else you can read this other than intentionally provocative. I think he admits it himself. Yeah.
And the question is it useful to know someone like that and talk to them? In my opinion, yes.
Hmm?
But because I didn't go through all of that hell that many of these women
Sure.
have been through, there's no way in the world, in my opinion, that I'm going to have a remotely the same reaction
Hmm.
that they would. You know what I mean? And so I
Yeah.
never feel any kind of like, oh my God, I can't believe they're having a reaction. Ever. Male, female, straight, gay, whatever. Cancel me for whatever. Because, like, of course, people have all sorts of lived experiences and trauma and shame and disgust and hatred that they've lived through. And that's exactly why they're having a reaction. And they're trying to protect themselves and other people from a real perceived threat. How actionable that threat is, I have no clue.
Hmm?
I don't know what he does in his private life. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But online, he's role modeling something that they're afraid of and they think is disgusting. And also, fair enough, genuinely,
I totally agree.
you know?
Yeah. I
So
mean,
that's why I like freedom. To I want people to be understood, number one,
mhm.
but I want them to feel free to do whatever they need to do, so long as you're not actively trying to kill somebody.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, of course, understand the ire towards him, and I also understand the ire towards myself, being okay with being friendly with someone like that. I like it makes
Yes.
sense to me that you would not like me. I don't like that. I
Yeah.
would like to be able to be friends. At this point, you could probably tell. Like, I would like to be friends with everyone. I think people are interesting. I can see value in different places. And do I? I mean, I've said this to Jake. Like, do I like? Is that how I would behave towards anyone? No, this is not how I would behave towards anyone. But you're you, and you know what? You were talking about this. I think I heard a clip of you talking about this somewhere else. Is that we need people like that? I think we need people like that. He was in the Marines. I am not built for the Marines. I am too sensitive and gentle. I don't think I could cut it. But I appreciate people that can and do certain things like that and fulfill functions in society that I don't want to fulfill myself.
Yeah.
And just like these other people, the other people that have decided that they don't want to be a part of me, they also fulfill a function in life that I don't think I want to be a part of. And that's
Yes.
great. And so, part of this is, I think the most frustrating thing that I have seen, and I don't know if you feel this way, is that the claims, I think, towards people like you and I, that that we're so shocked and surprised by the way people react to us. I'm like, no, I'm not really that surprised. Like, I'm a little disappointed, but it's like my own personal stuff, but I'm not surprised at all. And yeah, like
Yeah.
I knew I was going to get in trouble for a joke that I made, and I was like, I want to make a joke, and I think it's funny, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but like,
Yep.
that's who I
Yep.
am.
Yep.
And fair enough. Like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. And I think to me, another important takeaway for everybody listening and watching in terms of like personal responsibility and Glasser and all this stuff is if you have, this is my opinion. I am not God or something, but this is my overly confident opinion.
Okay,
How
okay.
would you like to say it? I am very confident that if we think of online and in real life as an ecosystem, if we have like ecosystem thinking,
Mhm.
then what we realize is we have different types of creatures that serve different purposes,
Yeah.
right? So I think the people that hate me serve a very specific purpose in the world and they're useful. I don't like when people aggress against me. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very much, but they serve a purpose. Most people on the planet that I can imagine serve a purpose, a useful purpose, even if you hate them, even if they're morally disgusting to you.
Yep.
And I don't know that I am arrogant enough or brilliant enough to say this group of people does not deserve to exist. And maybe I'm rationalizing or minimizing or who the fuck knows, but my belief genuinely is that if I take the arrogant step in my opinion of saying these people should not exist, then I am doing, I think, inhuman, cruel things. I'm guilty of like fascistic, authoritarian thinking. And I just don't think I can know enough to know all the things that the ecosystem needs
Yes.
because I haven't been alive for thousands and thousands of years since these ecosystems have been alive, if that makes sense.
What There's so
It's
much happening. The world is so big and so complex. The idea that, like, of course, we're going to need a huge plethora of people with different styles to handle it. It just, from like a conceptual, it doesn't make any sense to me any other way. If it couldn't function any other way.
Yeah. And so, are there people online that I think are absolutely disgusting and I wish harm upon them? Yes, especially politicians. I hope lots of harm befalls politicians. But other than them, everyone's great, you know? And so, like, all kidding aside, this ecosystem thing I'm talking about, if we apply that to our patients, right? If we apply that to our friends and our family, the people we talk to online, it's easier to be more in acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean you like the person's behavior or that you agree with the person's behavior. Acceptance is about you and your sanity, not about the world and morality, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yep.
And so, if you really are trying to live in acceptance, you will have your reactions as you have them. Because, I come from a recovery background. So, all of the recovery people in my life, I've been living and breathing the concept of acceptance since I was 8 basically and I could remember. And so my life is better because I try to be in acceptance of the things that I think are disgusting and absurd but also that are wonderful and lovely.
Hmm.
And that includes people that I detest.
Hmm.
That includes ideas that I detest. Like, as an LGBT person, I really detest homophobia, but I understand it. I get exactly where it comes from.
Yep.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I am in acceptance of the fact that people I know probably have that attitude towards me. And I'm in acceptance of that. I don't like it. I don't necessarily spend as much time talking to those people.
Hmm.
But I'm not like, these people are great. These people are amazing. Those Nazis over there, those are great people. Like, that is not what I think, right? I think they exist. It's not my job to murder them. It's not my job to make them go away. It's not my job to censor them. It is my job to exist and do what I need to do to be the best example of what I believe is good for me specifically,
Well,
right? And that's personal responsibility.
I agree.
Ecosystem thinking leads to personal responsibility.
when this idea of acceptance, it seems to me that it is a just I learned this in a weird way. So you mentioned that like the disgust kind of trigger that we have, and we all have these kind of disgust mechanisms that go off inside of us. I remember having
Yeah.
this weird experience. Like I was like outside doing something, and like like you get like mud or like something on you, and you kind of have some people you'll have this disgust mechanism. And I'm like, oh wait, this is like a mechanism to keep me safe because it's like, this is like a dangerous thing, and I'm like, this makes no sense right now though. Like this is totally illogical, and like, oh, my disgust mechanism can trigger at times for things that are totally irrational because that's just how I am. And
Yes.
and it was this like little moment for me of like, oh, this can apply to people too. And so just because I have that intense visceral reaction that wants to maybe hurt someone because of the thing that they did, that doesn't mean that that is what I should be doing or if this is healthy. Is that, oh, I can do this. And then that realization was I can still accept them because that's who they are. And like this person, although they may disgust me and I may very much abhor their behavior or do any of this, okay, they exist. And it's something you said on Twitter that I really loved, which was, we cause a lot of our own suffering in our life. And like, I can just not pay, I
Yeah.
can just not talk to that person. I can just not interact with them, and often we don't. We walk right back into that wall repeatedly.
But that's exactly
Yeah.
what these people are choosing to do. They are choosing to not make themselves suffer. And I have lots of respect
Yeah.
for that.
Mhm.
I don't feel bad about that decision. I think that's a smart decision. I don't know that that's going to make them more resilient in some way, but that doesn't have to be their goal, you know? And so, for me at least, the question becomes what is this person's goal? Which goes back to the therapy
Yeah.
conversation. If the person I'm sitting across from does not want to be more resilient, that's not on me, you know? And that is something that I think is very common in the clinical world. I think many psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists of every degree level have a lot of wishful thinking about their patients. And they wish that their patients were stronger, smarter, more attractive, more capable, more talented, felt more whatever. And so the challenge we have, going back to the encouragement conversation, is the question of am I encouraging a lot because it serves some need for me to feel special? Am I encouraging a lot because I want to be idealized? Am I encouraging a lot because I see the patient as incapable? Right? So it's a fine balance thing in therapy specifically, because you can do anything too much, right? And so being aware of our motives is very, very important when it
Hmm.
comes to the clinical side of this conversation. However, I would say online or in real life, encouragement's probably in much shorter supply. So you don't,
Hmm.
maybe you don't need to be as strategic, I would say,
Well,
you
and
know?
there's a tricky thing in what you were talking about, like with the encouragement in therapy. Is just, I think you have to be very cautious about what are you encouraging, because I think it is very hard sometimes to peel apart what should I be encouraging? Especially, within a clinical role, but even just as a friend, we often are encouraging people without us realizing it, things that are not good for them. And we have often our own personal reasons for doing this. Is that I don't want
That's right.
to confront this person, so I'm going to encourage them to keep, doing the thing that they're doing because I believe in them, even though I kind of know that I don't think this is a great idea.
Which is about you looking good, by
Yes.
the way.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So it is the encouragement needs to be there, but it is this always tricky thing is what are we encouraging, and do we want in clinical setting I want to encourage the person to again, using these ideas to be able to fulfill their needs at a better rate without having to do things that are harmful to other people. And it seems to be you need encouragement, and it's hard because we often again there. I think I think you maybe feel it is a easier trap to avoid, but for me personally, I know it is very hard sometimes to confront people about things that that they are going to feel dismal about, and that may be a necessary thing to do to someone with enough relationship built there. And so it is hard, I think, obviously navigating how much is my relationship is built so that this person can trust, because that's to me the part of this is that trust that I'm not maybe challenging you because I dislike you or I want to hurt you, but I have to establish enough relationship that I'm telling you this because I care about you actually, and I'm going to care about you so much. I'm going to tell you, even though you're probably going to get kind of upset, maybe even be mad at me.
Which is what those friends of ours did to us.
And they're allowed to. And the responsible thing to do, according to the book, is do it anyways. Let them be mad at you.
Right.
Yeah, that's okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And that's, again, I have all sorts of respect for people, professionals, people online, everywhere, who are willing to try and do what they believe is the caring, understanding thing. Or if you're like myself and you're not online to be caring, do whatever you're there to do, essentially. So for me, every time we have an opportunity as professionals to role model something and be clear about it, that's a win, even if it's not the most pro social something.
So I don't know if there's anything else you want to talk about. There's something I've been meaning that I wanted to talk to you about, and maybe we could pivot to it. We've kind of talked back and
Let's
forth
do it.
about this, your ideas of non-attachment, and
Yeah.
I wanted to hear you just actually articulate what it is, rather than, because I think I'm doing a lot of just kind of inferring what that means, as opposed to like you laying out what this is, and to see if whether I can get on board with this idea, because I think I'm still hesitant. I'm like, I kind of like being attached to things, but maybe I'm misunderstanding.
No, I would be surprised if you're a misunderstanding.
Okay.
So, the ideas that I'm talking about are not mine. Hopefully everyone
Yeah.
understands that this is very ordinary garden variety Theravada Buddhism going back, long time in history. And so the basic principles are, if you look at the four noble truths in Buddhism, you know, attachment or clinging to, however you want to phrase it, it's essentially all the same in Pali and Sanskrit. But the basic premise is that when we are attached, when we when we believe something, if there's a should in our mind, etc., that is when we suffer, right? And so we suffer not because we have feelings. We don't suffer because we have needs, wants, urges, or feelings.
Okay.
That's all a neutral experience in the Buddhist philosophy. And not that those feelings are inherently good or bad, just we have them. That is the ordinary state of being. Attachment is also the ordinary state of being. We are conditioned by our instincts, urges, survival needs, so on and so forth, to want something to be something, essentially, right? So I want this conversation to go well.
Sure.
I want to be liked. I want to feel good. I want to feel alert. I want to feel tired. I want to feel horny. Whatever I want to feel, right? So it's that I want or I should or I ought, etc. So all the attachment kinds of things we can do.
Hmm.
So what happens is for most people, attachment pushes them and pulls them in directions where they achieve things in life, which is normal. That's how we're all conditioned. That's how society works. That's what's normal. So attachment and non-judgment work in this hand in glove kind of way to help you tolerate the present moment in a way that allows you to be more free. Nowhere in Buddhism do they promise you'll no longer have feelings
Hmm.
or judgments or reactions, right? And so it's not my specific goal, just to be clear, that I'm on Twitter or at home here or at Cal Lutheran where I teach, and I'm walking around having transcended and have done what's not even Sam Harris, etc., could do, essentially. Like, my belief is, as messy as I am, if I try to advocate for these two attitudes,
Hmm.
maybe it will help some people, number one, because these two attitudes have helped me, right?
Hmm.
So practicing the attitude of non-attachment and practicing the attitude of non-judgment to the extent that I can humanly, because I cannot perfectly do these things. I
Okay.
cannot spend every millisecond not noticing, not attaching, not judging, right? It's impossible, right? So my conscious mind, my unconscious mind are both going to push me and pull me, and that I'm going to do and say things that are clearly related to attachment
Hmm.
and judgment, as evidenced by my behavior online, as evidenced by my behavior as a
Yeah,
professor,
yeah, yeah.
in my relationship with my cats, etc. So like I'm not claiming that there is some transcendent experience that you're missing out on by just judging a little less and attaching a little
So
less.
it's
My
more of an
argument is,
aspirational
go ahead.
attitude.
It's
It is something that you are going towards, knowing that you will never
right.
get there.
Now, I think in old school Buddhist approaches, especially the Theravada folks, you could practice so much mindfulness and chanting and all these things and become a monk and live in a monastery. You could create a life where you are working your way towards transcendence and nirvana and you reach enlightenment and all these things. I personally probably will not get there, is my guess, because I'm not interested in living that life. I love my attachment to my cats and the gym and all these things. And what I try to do is I have a looser relationship
Mm,
to attachment, right? So it's a degree difference than it is a black and white thing.
got it.
So if I'm consciously aware that I'm a little worked up right now, what am I worked up about? What can I do about that? What do I want to do about that? If I can be aware of that, maybe I can attach less to an outcome or a feeling or a want, right? And then same thing with judgments. If I have a judgment about myself or other people or circumstances,
Mhm.
I have the choice to notice it and feed into it by paying extra attention to the judgment, or I can notice it and do less with it and feed it less energy,
Okay.
right?
All right, so yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I think it was a misunderstanding of like the desire to reach that enlightenment state where there are no attachments. Because like as you said, like there are things that I love that I don't want to give up on that attachment to. I can't foresee that being a better life. And to me, it's like, how do I optimize almost in some way this balancing act of attaching to things, but that space, which I notice very often, at least my experiences, Twitter's a great example of this. I often write something and then I will stop and be like, what am I doing? Why am I
Mm,
doing this? I will then erase it because this isn't actually what I want to do. I was acting somewhat impulsively because I was angry, upset, happy, excited, whatever the case may be. And I'm realizing that, oh, I am feeling a strong feeling towards this. But what do I actually want to do about that? And to be able to get
mm,
that space, and I'm not sure if this is exactly what you're talking about, but that space for me is something that I feel like carved out over time. And to your point, it has been I can't say how profoundly positive it's been for my
mm.
life to be able to say like, oh, I'm having a reaction. And that's often how I look at myself. I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm real fucking worked up right now. Huh. Wonder what's going on.
yeah,
And
yeah.
just be okay with sometimes it's like something kind of like cringy almost. And for me, like an example that I have that I don't like to admit, but it's just this is just true, is that I'm having reactions to my childhood and my parents, and that reaction is happening again, and I'll be like, ah, fuck, dude, I'm 39, like this should stop, but like it just is, and I've accepted it, and I then can just be like, okay, well, what do I want to do about this? I don't want to recreate that same fucking experience that was miserable for me over and over and over again. So, like,
Yeah.
let me take a step to the right and go this way. And that ability to, like, it's like, to me, it's been a pause. That pause of, like, oh, okay, there's something happening and I'm queuing into it. And that pause, and I am very, I would say, in the way that you describe it, unattached to my feelings, that they're just
Mm.
signals, and sometimes they're useful and sometimes they're not. And I attend to them when I want to, and
Yeah.
not imperfectly, and obviously, like you, very
Yeah.
imperfectly. I'm fucking up all the
Yeah.
time, and I'm like, so I'll
Yeah.
go back. I'm like, why did I do that? Like, like that? That is not what I wanted, and but it was in that moment. Yeah, best I could do.
Yeah, and that's you trying to practice non-judgment through metacognition, being aware of what's happening in the moment. And metacognition is one of those very useful general skills that you learn to develop in different types of therapy. All good
Yep.
forms of therapy basically increase metacognition. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about all the mindfulness based stuff that I do in my life is it allows me to not only feel more free like I said, but it also allows me to make better decisions like you're describing with your Twitter behavior like I cannot imagine the old me that was much more reactive and much less intentional. And the concept of caring really bothers me now because I notice the moment that I care about something, it almost always has something to do with my shit and not to do with the actual
Fair.
circumstance. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Totally.
Like, so there's just, and again, that's not to say that in order to be a healthy and well-adjusted person, you should just get to the point where you don't care. That is not what I'm trying to say. Even though people come at me on Twitter as if I have said that, that is not what I am saying. What I'm saying very clearly is my life is just better the less I attach
Yeah.
and the less I judge. Less does not mean black and white. Less means less, right? So if I have a day where I judge 50% less and I attach 50% less and I feel better, that makes sense.
Mhm.
But do any of us really have the capacity to be, like schizoid or psychopathy completely detached? I doubt it. I
Mhm.
just genuinely doubt it. And so I would hope that anyone who's listening to this just hears that we're trying to have a reasonable approach to the concept of non-judgment and non-attachment, not like you know, you get to be some Buddhist monk who has transcended and I am above you because I don't have a reaction. I think a lot of people have that reaction to me on Twitter. I think they're like, well, Lockwood's a dick who just doesn't attach because he thinks he's better than us. And I will have news to you. Or excuse me, I will tell everyone very clearly. Let me speak as clearly as possible and non-evocatively. I'll try to be kind about this. If you believe that I think I am better than you, you're correct. And the reason you're correct is because I am better than you if you want me to be better than you. I don't want to be better than you, but if that's what you want from me, I'm happy to be that for you.
Mhm. I'm trying to. Can you say that again?
Yeah.
I'm trying to put that together.
If you are one of the people online or in real life that thinks that Dr. Lockwood is smug and a dick, and he thinks he's better than us because he practices non-attachment or non-judgment, or he's a faker, or he's a liar, or whatever it is. If you believe that about me, you're correct. And the reason that you're correct about that is because I'm not the one trying to tear somebody down. So I am better than you because
Mm.
that's my standard. My standard is I don't want to tear people down. I want to tear ideas down.
Mm.
But I don't know if you've experienced this with me, but how much time do I spend tearing people down?
I mean, that's just my experience with you. I've never seen it. It's certainly been implied about you quite a bit. I've never seen it, and that's just been my, yeah, again, minimal month-long experience with you. I've seen you criticize ideas and challenge people on their notions of things. I have not seen the kind of, I think, what I feel similarly, to tear someone's personhood down, that they're less than as a human, and to belittle them. And I think that is always that stirs something up in me. That's where I get frustrated, because it's hard out there. And the idea of us to spend our time tearing stuff down. I like the idea of, like, yeah, I am better than you in that case, because I am doing a better job not doing that.
Correct. So I genuinely
Sure.
believe that I am better than the people that think I'm better than them because I'm trying to practice what I preach.
Yeah.
And do I do it perfectly? Of course not. Am I legitimately, seriously, 100% actually better than people? No, not
It.
really. I think we're all pretty much the same. I really genuinely, like, all kidding aside, I love the idea that we're all one consciousness. It's a
Mhm.
terrifying thought, but I think it's also the correct thought. I just think the problem is we're so physically disconnected from ourselves and other people that we can't experience the consciousness of other people enough. But I really do like the kind of like panpsychist, we're all kind of one consciousness thing, which is why I don't really actually genuinely believe I'm better than people. Because, like, if we all share the same consciousness, then I'm just part of it.
Yeah, I guess that when I think of, like, being better, in my head, it's always like, well, it's very domain specific. I am better
Mm.
than some people at certain things, and
Hmm.
I am. But the idea when you, like, take that as like a whole never has made
Hmm.
sense to me. It's because it's like, well, that's just, that guy's better than me at this, or like she's better than me at that, and it's never
Yeah,
makes any
yeah.
sense.
But I think the disagreement I have with you is if you really want to think that about me, I encourage you to believe it's 100% true. I want you to go all the way. Like, I want you to, like, devalue me and see me as evil. If you're going to go that far, I am better than you. Just go for it.
Why
I'm
do you
down.
want?
I'm
But
I'm
why do you
I'm
want that though?
happy.
But what
I
makes
don't
you happy about this? That's what,
I don't think I want that. I think I'm okay with it. Like I will happily represent whatever evil narcissistic thing you want me to. Cuz at least it's not someone who's going to hurt you.
and so I think one of my questions, I think the criticism you get offline, you use the word happy about that. Why are you happy to be someone's villain? That's something I can't wrap my head around because I find that very aversive personally.
So, you know how there's no way to prevent suffering, right? Cuz just it's
Sure.
attachment and judgment, right?
Okay.
Because I'm not super attached to people's opinions of me, and I didn't say 0%, I said I'm not super attached, just so we're all clear. It's great to be the bad guy because it doesn't actually mean a whole lot, right? It doesn't mean anything to me, nor should it.
Hmm.
Unless you actually know me and you see me do something evil, I don't care what you think about me. I'm not attached to it. So I'm happy to be the bad guy because, like, I'm not going to hurt you. And there's
Sure.
extremely low chance you're actually going to hurt me. So, like, feel free to have all sorts of fantasies about me. Go wild.
I
Because I'm a safe person to see as evil or whatever. I'm good with that. I'm totally good with that because
hmm.
I don't need to be the good object for everybody. You know what I mean? I think
Hmm.
some people, especially people who are more narcissistic than I am, really badly want to be the good object to people. I think
I,
there are a great many people online, in particular, who really badly want to be the good
well,
object, and
I think
I
I'm
couldn't.
I own it. Like I think it's a part that I know that I struggle with, and that I
Yeah,
think partly what I'm trying to do right now is challenge myself to not just be that. Now, I think one of the things I want to intentionally do online is try to bring ideas together and see what we can agree on. But at the same time, I think learning how to be okay with that and to be like there are going to be people that dislike me, and this to me, I'm very aware this comes back to this again. This is my baggage coming up. I'm aware this is not a thing that I want to have, but is I recognize is a part of who I am, and that I do struggle with these things. Like this is just like I have a visceral reaction to it in which I will ruminate about these things, and it is these moments, and it's as we're talking about this, I do think it is a practice that I've gotten better out of. Wait, what am I doing? Why do I care about this person that I've never met,
mm-hmm,
doesn't care
mm-hmm,
about me?
mm-hmm,
And why do I actually care
mm-hmm.
about their opinion? Like I have all these wonderful people in my life that actually do know me, and they don't say these things about me. Why do I care so much about this? But it is a I one of the things I am intentionally trying to do is own the parts of myself that I am not ashamed of that actually. I know that what you're saying, I don't maybe you were saying intentionally about me, but I was like, oh, that describes me, I think, pretty perfectly. And
Mm,
I'm okay just owning that that is a flaw of mine that I am trying
mm.
to actually challenge and overcome. Because, I think we started this thing off that I agreed with something you said that it was arrogance on my part to hold people up to a standard that I didn't ask them to be in. Um,
100%.
yeah, and I don't disagree with that. And it's one of those things you don't notice that you're doing until, thank you, someone points it out to you. And I actually mean this very seriously. Something like that, because you and I have now had several personal interactions. I have
Yeah.
a trust that you're not saying that to shit on me. I think you.
No,
I don't even know if you were talking about me personally, but
I wasn't.
even if you were, I would have been like, I appreciate you that you would tell me that because I know a lot of people won't tell me things about me that that would serve me, and I'm the type of person, at least, that I like knowing these things because I genuinely would like to change over time.
Yeah, and not everyone is ready to hear things, etc. I think it's genuinely true. So that's why I said it, you know?
Yeah,
And I think there's also this just challenge of it's perfectly normal to want to be the good object. We want to be
sure.
liked.
Hmm.
Totally understand. I'm very clear that I like being liked. I like the attention for sure. And so do I try to get those needs met on Twitter, for instance? Not usually. Sometimes I do, but not usually. I actually try to get those needs met in plenty of other places
Hmm.
in real life, which is why I'm clear I'm not really doing that online, comparatively speaking. So, am I more useful getting those particular needs met online, or am I more useful getting those needs met other places, right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
something I think about because I grew up with this waspy like be of service thing, and it's made my life better. It's not perfect, but it's made my life better. And so, if I can be the bad object online for people to some degree and be perceived as mean, narcissistic, uncaring, detached, psychopathic, whatever bad thing, put it there to the people who don't like me and to the people who like me, I don't know. But like maybe I am the safer representation because I'm not actually going to hurt people. I'm
Mhm.
not actually going to get up and assault somebody or molest somebody. I'm not going to talk nasty to somebody online most of the time. I think the worst thing that I do online is if I have some trolly kind of person in my comments is I'll say your mother. I think that's the worst thing I will do.
I
And it's
I
fun.
I'm glad you're having fun. Um, I really appreciate something you just said. I think is actually very valuable. Maybe for me, is seeing this as allowing yourself to be the bad object and to be a safe bad object, and just in that to be good. I'm not sure how else to put that, but that is a thing worthy of doing. Not
I
I
think
don't
it,
know. Go ahead.
I think it's worthy of doing. I don't know that it's good, but I think it's worth doing because
Mm,
it serves some purpose. Is it like good in all
sure, sure,
contexts?
sure.
No, I
Yeah.
don't think so. Like, I think it hurts people. I think that some people are very offended by it, but that doesn't mean that it's actually bad for them, per se.
Hmm.
It's like the least harmful bad they could experience is some narcissist talking on Twitter, you know? Compared to some actual person in their real life who cares about them being mean, dismissive,
Yeah.
neglectful, abusive.
It's an interesting thought that I've often had of like you break this up of like internet relationships and like real life relationship. I've often felt like the internet is a playground to try
Hmm.
out things.
Sure.
In some ways, I have utilized it that way as to I'm going to try out aspects of my personality that I'm not sure I'm comfortable or courageous enough to express in my life. And it's something that I think happens often online, and that phenomena gets out of control, and that you allow too much of these parts of yourself that have not been able to be expressed, and it is free flowing because the consequences are, as you I think correctly pointed out, essentially zero online for the overwhelming majority of situations. Like the worst thing that's gonna happen is you get kicked off the thing. Like nothing's actually gonna happen.
Yeah. I mean, the worst case scenario is I get booted from Twitter.
What are you gonna do with all your time then?
I mean, I definitely post a lot, but I probably spend a maximum of like 15 minutes a day, even though it's mini posts, because I
Mhm,
just post and go. Just I don't really think, you know.
mhm.
So if I lost that 15 minutes, I'd practice more languages probably.
Mm. I'm always, I always like hear people like are like I'm very like I hate that I'm on Twitter so much. I'm like I love Twitter. Like I feel like I have a great relationship with it where it's
It's
like
fun.
it's super fun, and I don't feel like as you said like I think I'm over 15 minutes, but it's never like oh my god this is like killing me and I'm not able to do any other part aspects of my life. It's like hey I got a couple minutes, go see what's going on. Let's screw around, have some
Yeah,
fun. It's
yeah.
great.
Let's see what crazy stuff is happening today,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know?
you have any other thoughts? Otherwise, I think we're going.
Was there more Glasser stuff you wanted to talk about?
Let me think of things that I would well I guess too, again it was the original idea that I had that again I just like the idea of playing with a totally different conception of something and to see where
Oh, the
you can take that.
psychopathology piece?
Yeah, and just that
Yeah,
like
yeah.
if you removed that and just said, "Hey, I'm going to help you," and in this idea that we've kind of talked about, that I am on your team, and that I've spent enough time to not only I have to genuinely feel that way, but also spend enough time to let someone know and allow them to feel that from me. That with that, and I help them become more responsible. But as our definition of helping them meet their own needs. Do we need all these other categories, or are these
So
subcategories of an irresponsibility?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so let me speak to that because I think we completely lost that, or I did something to get us off of that. So,
Yeah,
the question is, are diagnoses really real, or is it just matters of degrees of in irresponsibility or something like
yeah,
that? So I would say por qué no los dos? Because to me, at least, I believe it's always both. I believe it's literally always both. I think that there are people who are diagnosed, who have a valid diagnosis. It's for real, it's not made up or exaggerated or whatever.
Mm,
And it also involves massive amounts of personal irresponsibility. So I think that for people with an actual mental health problem, for sure, like I don't think there's an amount of personal responsibility that's going to fix bipolar 1 with psychotic features. I do not. I genuinely do not. And those people in history have also not survived for very long or lived very good lives because of the impairment from their illnesses. And so I think for many of the psychiatric conditions that we treat as professionals, it's both. It's irresponsibility and it's a valid illness. Now, there's a lot of people that I have called the worried well that just struggle with only responsibility and not an illness, right? So I think it's both. And I think there are certain categories of illness
mm,
specifically that there's no amount of personal responsibility that's going to fix your life. Like I have a patient right now who has a horrible chronic cough. He also has failing kidneys and he's on dialysis.
mm,
And he also has a heart problem. And so he has bad insomnia, and there's no amount of personal responsibility that is going to fix the heart problem,
mm.
the kidneys, and the chronic cough. You cannot stoic your way
Sure.
away from those three terrible medical
Yes.
conditions that make it hard to sleep. So, what we can do is we can own the fact that there's a little window of personal responsibility in his life that he can do something about. And then there are these giant medical things that his other care providers are trying to help him with. And so, of the pie chart of things he is responsible for, he is responsible for, I don't know, 10% of the outcome of his sleep. But if you wake up coughing, that's not
Sure.
something you can think about your mother about and get over or whatever.
Well, and so,
You know?
oh, and I think this is an interesting kind of distinction here because I don't think the implication, at least my reading of this, is that I don't think he would disagree with you at all, and that there are illnesses. But it's like, how do we define what is, as far as like with, and I don't know this. I don't treat bipolar 1, but is there something medical? Because you brought up a bunch of medical issues, and I don't think he would say, well, we're not treating medical issues here. But the things that we can treat in your life, and for psychologically at least, that is what we're trying to do, is the things that we actually can do, not the things that we can't do. And this dividing line between, hey, you may have every disadvantage to you that is totally outside of your control possible. What are the things within your control that we can help you be more responsible and taken care of? And I think that is the piece that he identifies. Not that you can just fix yourself like this or there's
But
magic here.
like we were talking about earlier, though, sometimes personal responsibility alone is not enough. You need other people. You need
Sure,
support,
but I think that's.
right?
But I don't want you to get lost in this. But that is I don't want people to be mistaken by Dr. Glasser's beliefs, because that is a fundamental part that cannot be separated. It is a fundamental requirement of what he is talking about, is that you must be involved, and the involved is the word that he uses, with at least one other person, which is another person that cares about you and is willing to be responsible with you, essentially. And without
Right.
that, he would. So I think he would agree with you. This idea of the bootstraps
Yes.
conservatives is bullshit, and it's
Yes.
nonsensical.
Yes. And that's what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
is that I think people could listen to this and be very concerned that what we care about predominantly is responsibility, when in reality, I think
No.
the pie chart's pretty complicated
Yes.
because there's only so much personal responsibility you can have if you don't have relationships
Mm-hmm.
or if you don't have physical health, right? And so to me, it's the interaction. I would talk about it more like an interaction between
Mm-hmm.
your personal responsibility, your insight, and your judgment, sources, your opportunities, your talents, like a SWOT analysis, and your ability to do things with the good luck and good grace of other things and other people in your life, right? Because that's the ecosystem thing. Either you're a functioning agent in that ecosystem for whatever role you're supposed to play in the ecosystem. If you're the fungus, if you're the cat, if
Yep.
you're the bird, if you're the sky, whatever. Like either you are because you're interacting in the ecosystem effectively and you're functioning as well as you can, or the ecosystem around you is not functioning super effectively. And that's why I like family systems theory a lot, because it removes the undue influence of personal responsibility.
Mhm.
And it makes personal responsibility systemic responsibility, right?
It's interesting in the case of family therapy with children, it makes a lot of sense to me because it's you cannot escape that system. I mean, you just don't have the autonomy, authority, money, all those things.
Yeah, of course.
It, and one of the things that I'd be curious of, just I think the value in this type of thinking though is, one of the things I think you and I have talked about is discussed in I think therapy circles quite a bit is what is the scope of our work and what are we doing here? Because a lot of that ecosystems thinking that I totally agree with you is that there's gonna be some just things in your life that you have zero control over, gonna have a massive impact for some people. And like you said, it might be 90% of it. But what I am doing when I'm talking clinically with someone is I actually don't have control over any of those things. And to make sure that I am not saying, yes, the world is terrible and you don't deserve these things, but for the time that we are together, what are the things that you can do and what do you actually have control over that we can work on within this one little context? So like we're just drawing out like a little tiny hole for some people, maybe. Some people it might be larger. But just I think it is so important to be honest about what I can and cannot do and draw those lines because I think we are often expected to do more than we are capable of doing in a therapeutic relationship.
So I don't know if you've ever watched this show. There's a show called Futurama. Did you ever watch it?
I'm not like religiously, but I've seen it.
Okay, so for those you don't know, there's I think, a very funny and entertaining animated show called Futurama. It's about the future and space and robots and aliens and all these things. There's this character on it named Bender, who's a robot. And in one episode, I think it's called Godfellas, like Goodfellas. And at one time, Bender gets hurled out into the middle of the universe because he's a robot, so he doesn't need oxygen or whatever. So he's hurled out in the middle of the universe. And eventually he runs into what the show is trying to say God is, essentially. It's a really cool show because it's written by a bunch of PhDs in like physics and chemistry and things like that. So smart people really wrote the show. And anyways, so their version of what they consider God is meets Bender and starts talking to Bender. And Bender asks all these like typical human like questions like, why didn't you help these people? Why didn't you save these people? Why did bad things happen? All this stuff. And the episode ends with Bender being like hurled back to Earth by God, essentially. And everyone's just amazed that Bender came back and they thought he was lost forever in the middle of the universe and all this stuff. And at the end of the episode, God says, if you do it right, people won't know you did anything at all, or something like that. And that I think is my approach to this, which is I want to be involved just enough that you didn't know I did anything. I don't want it to seem like I did
Yes.
something,
No. Yeah. Hmm.
if that makes sense.
No, it makes
So
total sense to me. Yeah. Because the emphasis that for me, whenever I'm working with someone, is I'm always thinking, how do I get you to the point where you don't need me anymore? Like that is ultimately should be my goal. Is that we're doing a thing here that is successful in some type of way and whatever the person that I'm working with deems fit, and then you move on and you didn't realize that I did some magic thing. I'm hoping actually someone that through maybe the conversations, whatever happened in that space, you went out and go did a whole bunch of things and changes happen. And often in my experience, people don't are that like we don't even really know you can't pinpoint where it happened. I know for my own personal therapy, I have no idea. I don't know the moment that something happened. It was a long series of events that included therapy, included my own life, included my own relationships in life, having children, the world happening. And it's like, how do I even know where and which part of these things changed? And I agree with you. I certainly don't want as a clinician to be like, I want to be number one on that list of the reasons why you changed. I think there's a mistake there that it's alluring. I think for people that desire that kind of power.
mm-hmm.
But I know for me, and I think good clinical work, that is, I like that idea of like, yeah, we don't even really know what happened, but something changed.
Yeah. And I think there are different ways to talk about it. My general takeaway is just you're using the relationship effectively.
Yes.
That's it. Now, maybe you have specific interventions you like. So, for instance, I'm a big fan of motivational interviewing. So, I do a lot of highlighting discrepancies and, being evocative and provocative and things like that. But there's no particular provocative moment or discrepancy I highlight that is the reason
Oh.
that people act differently. Also, I think it's wildly arrogant and narcissistic, even, to pretend that your 1 hour therapy session a week completely is the most important thing, even though the person has dozens and dozens of other hours in the week with dozens of other people.
Mm-hmm.
So you're telling me this one 50-minute conversation is hitting them in the heart real hard, but then the dozens and dozens of other conversations they have with dozens of other people are not impacting them in some important and meaningful way, maybe even more than you as a therapist? Like, give me a break.
It's so
You know
it's
what I
so
mean?
funny. I was just thinking back to this of when I worked in the schools, which is such a different setting than where I'm at now, and kind of doing private practice. The opinion was almost the opposite. It was, what do you expect us to do? These kids go home and have 23 other hours of the day, and I see them once a week, so they have however many hours in a week to go out in the world. What the hell do you expect me to do about this? And it was funny because it was the exact opposite, because we also felt powerless and we didn't know what to do because the chaos we were dealing with was so large. But it is interesting that you can have, you could see yourself falling on either side of that kind of spectrum.
Yeah, when in reality is we can only do what we can do.
We can do something though, but and that is, it's like, what can I want to do? The something that I can do in the 50 minutes that I can do, and be realistic about how much that maybe is. And and to
Exactly.
your point, one thing I do, I'm pretty not attached to what happens in those 50 minutes.
Nice.
I'm gonna give you my effort and attention for 50 minutes, but like, I honestly, it's very similar to how I do this. Didn't really think about our conversation today. I didn't prepare. Like, I prepared. I'm reading a book. I feel like I've done my requisite practice to have an intelligent conversation. But I'm like, all right, I'm gonna script out. All right, I got these bullet points I want to talk to Patrick about. When you're like, hey, is there anything else you want to talk about? I'm like, I'm sure there is, but like, I don't know. Like, it is part of to me, the fun of life is to be able to go see what happens. And I think a lot of the magic to me, and whether it's therapy or good relationships and good sex, is the spontaneity and seeing what happens and being present in that moment and aware of what is happening in that moment.
You bet.
So,
You bet.
yeah, I don't know. So your question of, do I have anything else I want to talk about? Probably it'll pop into my head 20 minutes later, and I'll yap it. I'll text you or something. But no, I got nothing
Great.
else. Do you have anything else you want to get off your chest?
No, I'm really grateful that we could talk and hang out and have fun.
I am as well. I appreciate you coming on here again. Hopefully we will do another talk in the future. But thank you all
Yeah.
for listening. Patrick, do you want to plug your stuff where people can find you if they want to find you?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is called The Psychology Checkup. I have a weekly podcast called Unshrink Me on Saturdays. And then I am on Twitter, so come harass me, try to cancel me. My handle is at Alobha Patrick, at ALOBHAPATRICK. Come get me.
He's a willing bad object for anyone that wants to take him up on that offer. So thank you again.
Yep.
Appreciate it.